All right, guys. So the liberal media went absolutely nuts yesterday when the Huffington Post released an article with the headline basically saying that the Texas legislature is removing a requirement to teach about the KKK and that it is morally wrong. Okay? Now, the woke revolutionaries on the left ran with this and tried to use this as evidence that, see, the Texas legislature, they want to ban the teaching of race, slavery, anything having to do with black history. They don't want to teach it. They want to erase history to make white people look all good.
I told you that all of this conversation and legislation against critical race theory had nothing to do with critical race theory. They wanted to stop the teaching of actual history in the United States of America. Now, the Senate in Texas, they have passed a bill to stop the teaching of civil rights. Yeah, that's what the Senate has done. Texas Senate bill passes to remove required lessons on civil rights movements from the public curriculum. Public schools in Texas are now one step closer to no longer being required to teach about various American civil rights movements in social studies classes. I told you this was the intent of all of this misdirection about critical race theory. Had nothing to do with an advanced theoretical framework formalized in the 1970s and was here well before that. Had nothing to do with it. It had everything to do with a false pretext of critical race theory to create a context to get rid of teaching true history in America. Now they're literally saying you cannot teach about Susan B. Anthony or Dr. King or any of them. You can't do it.
Again, those are what the left-wing lunatics are saying. Okay. And guys, like anything, right? When you see a headline like that, when you see something like that you just like, okay, might be too good to be true or too bad to be true. You got to look into the details, right? And when you actually look into the details of what happened, right? You can see that this is just one big lie, right? This is just one big fake outrage fest coming from the left-wing media as they are completely misleading and flat out lying, right? A lot of the lunatics on the left about this bill and what actually is required to be taught, right, from the Texas legislature. It's really kind of messed up how misleading this stuff is in the framing here. So this is a good write-up from Fox News, and people say, oh, it's Fox News. No, this actually is legitimate and pretty accurate, okay, to describe what's going on here in regards to this Texas bill and why the liberal media is misleading people on this. So I'm going to read the details here and show you guys literally the legislation, some parts of it, in regards to what is actually required to be taught, and it's not what the liberal media is actually making it out to be. So let's read here. Journalists and politicians appeared to mislead followers regarding a recent Texas bill regarding curriculum in public schools. On Tuesday, the liberal website Huffington Post reported on a recent Texas bill that passed the Senate on Friday. The legislation known as Senate Bill 3 related to the requirements and prohibitions of curriculum in Texas public schools. Within their report, the Huffington Post claimed the recent Senate bill would eliminate a requirement that public schools teach that the KKK and its white supremacist campaign of terror are morally wrong. The reading comes from the Texas House bill's original requirement of the history of white supremacy, including but not limited to the institution of slavery, the eugenics movement, and the Ku Klux Klan, and the ways in which it is morally wrong. The revised Senate bill removed this provision from the legislation. The Huffington Post highlighted that the cut is among some 24 curriculum requirements dropped from the new measure, along with the studying of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, the work of United Farm Workers leaders Cesar Chavez, Susan B. Anthony's writings about the women's suffrage movement, and Native American history. Various journalists and politicians took to Twitter to claim that the bill defends the KKK or bars denouncing the white supremacy group. Okay, so obviously, guys, like I told you, the left-wing media went hard against this as they tried to spin this as, well, you know, the Texas legislature, they don't want anything to be taught about the Ku Klux Klan. Again, not true, right? They're just not making it a requirement. And again, the more details that we get into here, right? And you can see this is all the outrage, okay, from the liberal media. You got MLK Kennedy up there. Again, none of these guys really read the details, but this is all the outrage, right? But once we actually get into details, you're going to see that that's not what happens here. The bill did not bar the teachings of the Ku Klux Klan, nor teaching that the white supremacy group was morally wrong. In addition, the Senate bill also required that teachers may not require or make part of education and inculcation in the concept that race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. Furthermore, teachers are barred from teaching that an individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or part because of the individual's race or sex. All right, so let's keep reading here, okay? I'm going to get to my point. The bill also required the teachings of the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964, the 13th, 14th, and 19th Amendments to the United States Constitution, the complexity of the historic relationship between Texas and Mexico, and the diversity of the Hispanic population in Texas. So this bill, the Senate bill that they're talking about, and this is the bill right here, requires the teaching of the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964, the 13th, 14th, and 19th Amendments to the United States. Wait, so I thought that it was trying to ban the teaching of civil rights and about the 13th, 14th, and 19th Amendments. If that was the case, then why is it required that they teach this? Right, they're specifically saying, no, we should teach about the Civil Rights Act, the 13th and 14th and 19th Amendments to the Constitution. And guys, keep in mind, this is the same state, Texas, that was celebrating Juneteenth before anybody else, right? But these same people are trying to claim that, oh, no, Texas, they don't want to teach about civil rights or anything like that. They don't want to, right? Because they're not making it a requirement to teach about very specific things. Oh, they're trying to ban the teaching of it. Wait, but wasn't Texas one of the first states to recognize Juneteenth? Again, y'all make that make sense for me. Make it make sense. So if you go down here, right, this is actually the part where they're talking about the whole critical race theory stuff. And the things that they're saying here is that teachers should not be required to teach about things such as that one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. An individual by virtue of the individual's race or sex is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. An individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly based off the individual's race or sex. That's literally all it says. Like, isn't this standard liberal ideology, right? Colorblind ideology. Isn't this what liberals used to be for, right? This type of education. And that seems to me to be exactly what is here. And again, guys, remember, this is the Senate version. So what happened is that according to Rich Lowry from the National Review, he says that the Democrats added a bunch of concepts and documents that school kids should know in the anti-critical race bill that passed the House a few weeks ago. Right? The list was incredibly detailed and extensive when it's the role of the state board of education, not the legislator, to get into the weeds and specifics of the curriculum. Besides, many of the items are already covered in the curriculum. Okay, so guys, with that extra context, basically what it means is that the Democrats added these very specific details into this bill, right? To say, oh, we should make this a requirement, knowing that the Senate Republicans would mark it out and be like, nah, we're not making this a requirement. It's very broad, right? If you notice, they're not super specific events in terms of what they're required to teach. It's just an overall understanding of certain things. And the Texas legislator is saying with the CRT section, look, y'all can't be teaching people that, you know, one race is inherently better than the other one or X, Y, and Z in relation to the required topics. That's what they're saying. But the liberal media tried to frame that as, well, they're trying to get rid of the teaching of the KKK and all. No, that's not something they were actually required to teach in the first place. They were never required to teach that. That is optional, and it's still optional. Matter of fact, again, if you look at the Texas standards, right, in terms of what they teach, okay, United States, a history study since 1877, if you look up Ku Klux Klan, bam, explain how Jim Crow laws and the Ku Klux Klan created obstacles to civil rights for minorities, such as the suppression of voting. Wait, I thought they was trying to ban it. This is already in the curriculum. This is what the Department of Education in Texas, the education agency, decided, okay, this is what should be in the curriculum. These are the specifics. The legislator just outlines the overall things that are required, right? You have to teach these things. Now, the details of what is taught, that is up to the actual education department, not the legislator. And the actual education department has already required the teaching of the Ku Klux Klan, okay? And how also, look, that part, how it created obstruction to civil rights for minorities. Isn't that what the left always wanted, right? Also, guys, look at this. If you look up Martin Luther King Jr., oh man, they teach about his assassination in here, okay? They teach about identify the roles of significant leaders who supported various rights movements, including Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, Dora Harata, Rosa Parks, and other people. Also discuss the impacts and writings of Martin Luther King Jr. I Have a Dream speech and letters from the Birmingham jail during the civil rights movement. Wait, hold on. I thought they were supposed to be banning all of that stuff. I thought that they weren't allowed to teach that stuff. It's right there. Texas is teaching it. Again, guys, like I said, this is the state that recognized Juneteenth. Also, guys, I want to make it clear here, just so you know how disingenuous the left is, how much they're just liars on this, right? If I look up World War, that's not in the Senate bill, right? So that's not technically required to be taught, okay? Not required to be taught. It's not in the Senate bill, okay? Just like the KKK. Not in the Senate bill, right? It's not required to be taught. But you notice they're not saying that they want to ban the teachings of that. But when you actually look at the curriculum, right, that's done by the Texas Education Agency, the agency actually responsible for the details. Oh, hold on. There's World War II. Well, would you look at that? Look at all the details here that they're actually teaching about. Things that are not required, but the education department actually sets the details for. Oh, why didn't the liberal media mention this? Why didn't they bring this up? Oh, are they trying to ban teaching about World War II and World War I? Right? Oh, no, so they're not going to say that because they're full of shit. But they're trying to paint these people as racist because they got rid of provisions that the Democrats added to the bill just to try to play the Republicans and make the Republicans look bad and racist when that's never actually really been required by the legislature in the first place. But it was always a part of the curriculum because the Texas Education Department actually goes into the details of what should be a part of the curriculum. See, this is what I'm talking about, man. This is what the liberal media does to try to frame everybody is racist. Oh, they're trying to ban this, they're trying to ban that. No, that whole critical race theory section in there is a defense of liberalism, right? The true definition of liberalism that they're supposed to be for, that the left is supposed to be for. But the left has went so far left, guys, that they're anti-liberal, right? They're anti-liberalism. Okay, they're in some whole different world, right? Where they want to teach concepts that one race is superior to the other and that one race is oppressing one race over another, when it's like, no, you don't have to teach history through that lens. You can still teach it. You can still teach about the Ku Klux Klan. You can still teach about slavery. You can still teach about Jim Crow, civil rights, and all that stuff, but you don't have to necessarily say that, well, you know, one group is superior to another group, or that white people have inherent advantages over other people because of their race and blah, blah, blah. Listen, all they're saying is that, listen, we should just teach the facts, and, you know, the opinionated portion of it, we should keep out of that. And people can learn that either at home through their own studies, or they can go to college, right? If they want an opinion on the civil rights movement and white supremacy and all that stuff, you can learn that stuff in college. But this framing that they're trying to ban the teachings of the civil rights movement and slavery and anything having to do with black history is garbage. Because again, if you look in the requirements, they're not required to teach about World War II, right? They're not required to teach about a World War I. None of that stuff is in there. So are you saying they're trying to ban the teaching of World War II and World War I because it's not in there? But it's in the curriculum that's outlined by the Texas Education Agency. Right? World War I and World War II is in there. Just like the Vietnam War is in there. Just like the whole white supremacy, Jim Crow, slavery, all that stuff is in there. You see how fake the arguments are from the left? You see how disingenuous it is? You see how nobody actually gives a damn about the details? Right? They just come out here and try to make people outraged for nothing without actually looking into the facts to try to say, okay, what's actually going on here? Again, the Texas legislature is not requiring that they teach about World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, any of these wars, okay, or any of these major events. However, none of them are making the argument that they're trying to ban that. None of them are making that argument. You know why they're not making that argument? Because they know it's bullshit. Right? And I'm sorry, I'm just pissed off because this is what happens, man. Like when you actually look into the details, you actually read, okay, you research, you see, okay, this is actually what's going on here, and the racism narrative falls apart. The racism narrative falls apart. So congratulations to all the dummies that failed for this. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.